announcements would have prepared me more for this, but... So my fellow seniors who graduated from Cassidy Middle School with me may remember that I gave the graduation speech. I was young and foolish, and I had put off writing my speech to the last possible day, and as a result was pretty nervous. But with 4 more years of acquired wisdom and experience, I learned and I grew, and I'm very thankful that I've learned how to handle putting off speeches to the last day. And while I've still got a bit of a knack for procrastination, a lot has changed between that speech and this one. The 8th grade version of myself stood at this podium and delivered a grandiose speech about greatness. I said something like God didn't create us to be ordinary. I swear I should have been delivering the speech to the 300 Spartans preparing to fight the Persian army, not the 50 kids ready to fight the dress code. And that kid might be surprised to hear what I've learned since then, but I like to believe he'd be wiser for it. In the last couple of years especially, I've learned that there is a most important trait that our daily grind can sometimes numb us to. And it isn't greatness, it's humility. And I understand why we may not talk about humility on the same level we talk about love or kindness or bravery. You might have heard the saying that as soon as you talk about humility, you've lost it. And I suppose this can be true in some contexts. But the more I've thought about my Cassidy experience, the more I've seen it pop up where we don't really think about it. For instance, team sports. Sports, and especially football, require you to put the team above yourself. A group of individuals playing for themselves can't be successful on the field or on the court. The successful teams play for each other and sacrifice their time, effort, and their pride for the good of the team. In my experience, the team that buys in is usually more content than the team that did not, regardless of how far they got. And some of my most humbling moments have come on the field. Most notably, tearing my ACL this year was a major bummer. The football team might know, I didn't love that. However, I found myself still feeling like although I couldn't contribute to the team with my athleticism, I could contribute with attitude. And I can't imagine how distraught I'd be if I didn't have a team that I could pour into and that could pour into me when I needed them. And I think that's true about life too. In Brené Brown's TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability, an ultimate questions shout out, she claims that connection is why we're here. Humility embraces that. In putting others before ourselves, we create and strengthen those connections. But sometimes I think we tend to prioritize achievement over connection. We stress about our grades, our college resumes, and then our grades. While in high school, I learned 3 words that honestly changed my outlook for the better. You guys are going to get mad at me for this. Teachers especially. Brace yourself. Grades don't matter. Now, this is a piece of advice for the underclassmen that I wish I had understood earlier. And I can feel the retorts coming from most of you. That's not true. Grades certainly matter to get into college, I want, and to earn scholarships. That's an irresponsible thing to say. How does this relate at all to humility? Well, I certainly can't dispute that grades are very important to colleges. What I'm saying is that sometimes we put an unnecessary burden on ourselves chasing numbers. My best GPA of my high school career was my freshman year, and I was stressed out of my mind. I literally cried studying for my Latin final. And I'm sure that's a thing most of us can relate to. So after I did that, after I cried and took this Latin final, I made 2 decisions that were very beneficial for me. The first, I dropped Latin. But the second, I decided that I could be a lot more attentive to others if I wasn't so consumed with chasing my grades. My GPA hasn't quite reached that level again, but I think I've become a more complete person for it, and I wouldn't go back and change any of it. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not suggesting that you just quit trying. Apathy is not any more fulfilling than stress, and it's not what I'm suggesting. I don't want anyone to stop learning, but sacrificing a study hall of study to listen to a friend is oftentimes more than a fair trade-off. Don't trade present impact and connection for future achievement. That's where humility comes in. Being there and present for someone at the expense of a not quite as successful outcome is a trade that not only benefits others, but can be more fulfilling and less stressful to yourself. And you'd be surprised at how much you can accomplish with less of a burden on these grades. Try setting a bedtime. The one I've tried to set this year is 10:30. And I will admit I'm being kind of hypocritical here because I did stay up later than that last night writing the speech. But normally I try to go to bed by 10:30. And if you get to your bedtime without all your work done, put it aside, get your sleep, and try to do it during breaks. If you can't, turn it in late. You can be more productive and patient when well rested, and I promise your grades won't suffer the dire consequences you think it might. Now, my final piece of advice relating to humility is this. Actually, it's not my final. It was my final one when I started writing it, so there's another one coming up. Another piece of advice relating to humility is this. Don't be afraid of failure. Sometimes we don't take risks because we're afraid of not measuring up, disappointing others, or disappointing yourself. And I totally get it. I almost didn't sign up for a senior speech for this very reason. But I got news. We aren't always great. We say things we don't mean, do things we regret, and otherwise make complete fools of ourselves. And 8th grade me's gasping right about now. But if we are really humble, we know we aren't better or worse than anyone else, and that's great news. It gives us the freedom to fail. If we were perfectly humble, then we wouldn't fear messing up and ruining the facade that we're better than what we are. Now, no one is perfectly humble, and I'm pretty certain everyone is afraid of failure at some level, me included. But if this speech encourages one person to step out of their comfort zone and take a risk, then it was more than worth it. Mr. Dima did that for me last year. As much as I loved watching theater, I never thought I was cut out for it. It just wasn't my thing. But junior year, Mr. Dima had some middle schoolers drop out of the play, and he would not stop badgering me about trying out. I finally showed up just to get some relief from him, and the people I met and the experiences I had in our town gave me so much more than that. It didn't matter that I was playing the roles middle schoolers turned down. I had an absolute blast. I've participated in every performance since, and I'm so lucky to have known the people in those performances in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise. So, my actual last piece of advice is this. Don't worry about being great, like 8th grade me told you to do. Don't worry about being great. Make your relationships great. If you don't worry about being great, you can afford to take the kind of risks I was talking about. Try out for the play. Write a poem. Go try a thing that's scary. Don't allow this idea of greatness or perfection to freeze you in place. And if you make your relationships great by just listening, encouraging, and caring, then you've established sources of joy that are much more stable than achievement. C.S. Lewis might have put it best when he said, "True humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less." Thank you.